Did you know that there are 50,000 scripts that get registered with the Writers Guild every year? 50,000 scripts floating around Hollywood, written by people hoping to turn their story into a movie. You know how many of those actually go through production and get released? 150. The likelihood of your script being turned into a real movie is a 0.3% chance. In Hollywood, it's not always enough to have a great idea. Sometimes a vision is so grand, so bold, that reality steps in and says, you're doing too much. There's one project in particular that this happened to, one that I wanted to find out more about because it would have been based on one of the best stories to come out of gaming, Bioshock. I mean, you clicked on the video, so this shouldn't be a surprise. For millions, one of them being me, this game was game changing. The Art Deco style, the freaky looking enemies, the iconic characters all made a huge impact on gamers ever since it came out in 2007. So when it was announced that a Bioshock movie was in development with an acclaimed director and a major studio attached, fans were ready. We were going to see the City of Rapture in all its crazy, demented glory on the big screen. But then, nothing happened. The movie never came out and ultimately it was shelved. What happened? Why couldn't a movie based on a major IP, backed by a strong creative team, be released? I wanted to go find out for myself. So, would you kindly come with me as we uncover what happened to the Bioshock movie? Way back in the olden days, May 9th, 2008, Universal Studios announced that they were developing a movie based on the story of Bioshock. Gore Verbinski, most well known for directing the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy, was attached as director with John Logan on as writer, who had previously worked on Gladiator and The Aviator, among other projects. Of all the games out there, I think Bioshock is the one that's the most engaging. I think the whole Utopia Gone Wrong story that's cleverly unveiled to players is brimming with cinematic potential. Verbinski had a clear vision for what he wanted for the movie. He saw it being on a scale similar to that of Blade Runner, with a focus on unique visuals and a theme of free will. John Logan's script goes through a lot of locations and set pieces across Rapture, some from the original game, some new, all of which would have been inspired by the Art Deco design the game is known for. The movie was also going to be violent, and I mean hard R rating violent. I'll get more into the script later, but it's clear that the creative team was very passionate about the project. Verbinski was also working closely with Ken Levine, the creative director of the Bioshock game, to make sure the movie adaptation didn't damage the franchise, and Verbinski insisted on filming as practically as possible. It's pretty clear that the creative team was very passionate about the project, and they wanted to do it right. So with a talented team that had a clear vision, backed by a major studio like Universal, things were looking pretty good to start pre-production. At least, that's what it seemed. My first meeting at Universal on Bioshock was sitting in a room and saying, "Hey guys, this is a $200 million R-rated movie." And it was silent. The movie was turning into a very ambitious project. To bring their vision of Rapture to life, it would heavily rely on both massive CGI and practical effects. Because, they can't shoot a movie taking place in an underwater city on location. It just wouldn't work. But this caused the initial budget to balloon from 160 to 200 million. And if you tell a studio that your movie not only needs a huge budget, but will also be an R-rated movie, shrinking its potential audience, that doesn't really instill a lot of confidence. See, 2009 was a very different time in Hollywood. Studios were starting to rely more on tentpole franchises as a way to guarantee ticket sales. This was also in a pre-Deadpool era, where R-rated movies were seen as a kiss of death. You wouldn't make your money back unless the budget was relatively small. Universal had just been burned by Zack Snyder's Watchmen, a big-budget R-rated movie that came out to decent reviews, but was ultimately a box office failure, something that Verbinski himself cited as a factor in the Bioshock movie ultimately getting canned. Along with all of that, there was the fact that Bioshock was going to be, a video game movie. At that point, video game movies were bad. They were garbage. There's no other way to put it. Lara Croft, Resident Evil, Doom, Silent Hill, they all did terribly at the box office among many, many others. So, needless to say, Universal needed a lock. They weren't going to risk losing more money, especially on a new IP. They negotiated knocking the movie down to a PG-13 rating, but Verbinski wouldn't budge from the hard R, and he stood firm on the budget. The studio then started looking at filming overseas to save money, which would ultimately just put a pause on production. So, can you tell me what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? I'll give you a hint. The director leaves this movie because he got sick of the process and ended up focusing on a different movie instead. Universal then brought in Juan Carlos Fresnadillo, director of 28 Weeks Later, to take over. But in the end, the project couldn't get over budgeting issues and it stalled completely. Ultimately, it was actually Ken Levine who shut it down. They brought another director in, and I didn't really see the match there. And 2K is one of those companies that puts a lot of creative trust in people. So they said, if you want to kill it, kill it. And I killed it. And the project was indeed killed, shutting down production 8 weeks before shooting was supposed to begin. Sets were even already being built. Now, with it coming so close to the finish line, I couldn't help but think, what were we going to get? What kind of Rapture were we going to see? Well, I found John Logan's original script along with some concept art, and it tells a really interesting story. It stays true to the game, but also takes some liberties in a lot of places. And it starts off pretty much the same as the game, with a man, a lighthouse, and a city. Jack is established as just graduating college in 1960. He feels this need to be free and make his own choices, taking a flight to Barcelona to escape a career his dad had already set out for him. His plane crashes in the middle of the ocean. He swims to a nearby lighthouse where he finds a bathysphere and ends up in Rapture. Jack's found by Atlas, who's with him side by side for a good portion of the story, and recruits him to help rescue his very real wife and child so that they can all escape Rapture together. They fight splicers, take Adam, which is more of a wonder drug that sends the user into a roided up rage rather than giving the user superpowers. And like I mentioned before, it is violent, probably more than the game. In one scene, a character harvests a little sister by bashing her head in with a mallet before using a syringe to extract Adam from her dead body, only for a big daddy to murder him. And when I say murder, I mean turning him into red mush. They also came across iconic characters like Dr. Steinman and Sandra Cohen, but they're more cameos rather than real characters to deal with. The second half of the script plays out a lot like the game. Atlas's family dies, and he asks Jack, "Would you kindly kill the son of a bitch?" referring to Andrew Ryan, the founder of Rapture and one of the main antagonists of the movie. The confrontation with Ryan plays out just like the game, which I won't spoil here, but Jack then runs into Bridget Tenenbaum, who makes her first appearance here, where she is shown taking care of the little sisters. Jack decides he's going to take his life into his own hands, hopping up on a lot of Adam, suits up as a Big Daddy, and faces off against Atlas. The script adopts the bad ending of the game, where Jack takes control of Rapture in Andrew Ryan's place, kills Tenenbaum, and sends splicers out onto the surface world. After reading the script, I'm not surprised that Universal got cold feet. I don't feel like the movie could have been anything but a hard R, at least not without extensive rewrites. And with the scale of the script, I don't see how the budget could have been pulled back. The story is incredibly ruthless and bleak, especially with the ending they picked out. I'm surprised that Universal developed it for as long as they did. Would the story have been good in execution? Honestly, I don't know. It's definitely an interesting read, but moves at a quick pace and has a lot of ideas to introduce. Unfortunately, we're never gonna know what actually could have been, but all hope is not lost. Bioshock may be coming to a local near you. In 2022, Netflix announced they were now working on a Bioshock film with Francis Lawrence directing and Michael Green writing. It now seems like Bioshock is being reworked to be a more personal story, and the reason for that seems to again be budgeting issues. What this means exactly for the movie is still unclear, but with the success of R-rated movies and video game adaptations in recent years, we might be in store for a memorable visit back to Rapture. Hey, if you made it this far, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I want to use this channel to cover more behind the scenes Hollywood stuff and other like movie industry related topics. So if you liked this kind of video and this kind of deep dive into what happened to a movie, please hit that like button and subscribe because I plan on putting out a lot more stuff like this. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one.